I'm going to replace the rear wheel bearing hub on my 06 Altima today. It's going to be the same process for 02 to 06, probably even beyond that year, make, model, but this one specifically is an 06. You want to make sure you have the right hub. When I bought this, it said it was for either ABS or non-ABS. Mine is a non-ABS, but a lot of times if you have a car with ABS, it'll have a little wire and sensor that runs off of it so that your braking system works correctly. So the listing I bought this off of said it would work on either, but I can't guarantee that. So make sure you get the right one. The only difference might be if you have an ABS model, it might have a little wire running off of there that you have to plug in. So I'll loosen these lug nuts first, and then I'm going to get it lifted up and secure on a jack stand. Take the wheel off. All right, once you're up secure on a jack stand, I always leave my jack under it too, just for extra assurance. You got your lug nuts off, and go ahead and take your wheel off. Sometimes they stick. Mine's sticking a little. Sometimes they fall right off. Give it a light kick. They usually pop free. You don't want to kick this sidewall too hard, or, and this is not from me kicking it, but you can bust the belt in the side like that. So I'm assuming that's from a pothole or something. If it's really stuck, you can tap around on the back side of the rim with a wooden block and a hammer. Yeah, I know this rotor's looking pretty horrible. I'm actually about to install new pads and rotors on the rear after this video. But to get to the hub then and get it off, you have to remove your caliper with the bracket and your rotor. So you just take these two caliper bolts out, this one here, and then there's another one matching down lower. Pop your caliper off, take the rotor off. All right, I got both those bolts out. I think they should both have this washer, but for some reason the other one didn't. So somebody must have worked on this before and lost the washer. 3/4 inch is the socket size. You want to be careful not to hit this brake line here or pull on the hose while you're getting those out. Then you can, oh, that's pretty loose. Slide this off, and you don't want to let it dangle from that line if you can avoid it. It's best to have like a brick block or something here to set this on, because you don't want to pinch the line either to like set it up in there. I guess that's okay. There we go. And also be sure it doesn't fall while you're working on it. So now need to get this rotor off. Usually they stick. If you're putting the rotor back on, be sure not to hit on the surface. Hit around the edges to kind of break it free. See, that's where you got to be careful with that. It's wanting to slide and fall off. Yeah, that's why I usually put a center block here and set this on. Tap around here though. If you're putting a new rotor on, it doesn't really matter, but it's still, in my experience, it's best to hit around here to break it free. But in doing that, you got to be careful not to hit your wheel studs. If you ding that up, you won't be able to get your lug nut back on. All right, now this is usually an issue with a manual transmission car. This one's automatic because manual transmission use the e-brake all the time, not so much on automatic. But you pop this little rubber plug out here, and the e-brake on this car, the way it works is this inside of this rotor here, it acts like a drum, and your emergency brake pads are in there. So they are basically a fraction of a millimeter away from these walls here. So a lot of times it can stick, and you can beat and beat and beat and beat the crap out of this, and you won't be able to get it off, because when you try to pull it off, those pads catch, and they're on springs and such, and it basically just holds onto it so that you can't get it off. So what you do is, there's a little adjustment gear in here. You're gonna need a flashlight, and this is gonna be difficult to show you guys on camera. There, you can see it. There's a little gear there, and you just stick a flathead screwdriver in there and twist that one way or the other. I believe, I don't know, I don't want to say for certain. One way makes the pads go out and grab harder, and you'll feel it because it'll get hard if you go the wrong way. And then the other way brings them in and loosens them so you can pull this off. So just keep track of how many times you turn it or how far you turn it. That way when you put this back together, you can put it roughly about back where you had it. And that's also how you adjust it if your e-brake is dragging. Alright, so I had to hit it pretty hard numerous times with my mini sledge there. You can see how hard I was hitting it. I try to get in between here. Seems to work the best as opposed to hitting on the edges. So this thing kind of tried to pop off on me there. Okay, so there's that little gear I was talking about. Like I said, one way we'll push them. Oh man, these things are gone. One way we'll push them out, and the other way I'll pull them in. I don't ever use the e-brake on this car, so because it's automatic and I don't park on any big hills, so I'm not really worried about those there. But this is also how you would change those. You have to pop these springs out, and I'm not sure if that holds it on or not, but a few things to pull them out and put your new ones in, and then you'll have to adjust it down so that the new ones with the thicker pad will fit. So anyways, I got this off, so now I can get this. Ooh, which is going to be fun. Not 100% yet, but I may have to remove these so that I can get the hub off. You can see right here, it looks like it's going to be clear when it comes out, but down here it's definitely going to hit. So I'm going to try to adjust them out and then see if maybe I'll have clearance to pull it out. If not, I'm going to have to take these off so I can get the hub out. Alright, so pushing on the bottom of this expands it, and then if you push the top, it'll collapse it. So you want to be careful not pushing it too far, because this is just basically a threaded cylinder here, and the threads are only about as long as this, so I'm pretty much on the tip now. If you go too far, it'll pop off, and then with it being under pressure from the springs and everything, it'll be a nightmare to get back together. So I'm going to try to get it out now, because I got way extra room now down here. It might still catch here, but I'm thinking once I get the bolts out, then I can kind of like go up with it and then out. And so I'm thinking I can get it out like that. The reason I'm going to try this first is because these are actually little pins that you turn them one way, there's a slot on the back, and then they'll come out, and then the current orientation where it is, it locks it. But a lot of times they're not very big. Actually, I think I can, well, I've seen it on one of them. Well, it's hard for me to show you, but yeah, the little tiny rod of that goes through, they're usually pretty freaking rusty and really small, so it's really easy to break those off. I've done it before, so that's why I'm going to try to take this out without taking these off, because a lot of times those break. So see if I can. If not, I'll have no choice. But like I said, if you're replacing these, or if you want to know how to take them out, you just basically, this will have to be all the way down. Unhook your spring there, unhook your spring there, unlock that, and then the whole thing should come out. So that's how those work. All right, so then on the back side here, you got your 4 mounting bolts in there. Top, bottom, left, right, each corner. And at least for me on this vehicle on this day, they are 17 millimeter. Although I think a shorter socket's going to work better for you, so you can get your ratchet in there, or breaker bar, or whatever. Where am I at here? I can't see. And definitely use a 6-point socket, because the 12 point's going to round the edges, because those are going to be pretty tight. Alright, so there's the 4 bolts out. They were surprisingly a lot easier to remove than I was expecting. But as you can see, that's because, well, these aren't corroded, and it actually bolts into an aluminum control arm or whatever. Nah, scratch that. I'm retarded. There's no threads in the control arm. It's just in the hub itself. So now basically it's just yanking this thing out of here, which of course they always stick. So the best thing for this is to hook a slide hammer on this. I mean, you might be able to get it out. Tap, I mean, as you can see, you can't really hit the back side with a hammer because everything's in the way. You might be able to pry around with a crowbar, which I'm gonna try real quick. But then obviously these aren't that strong, so you might get lucky prying around on it and tapping around on it, and there's no real way to get a hammer up in here and knock it out from the back. I mean, you could try to run like a rod or something from through here and under and tap it, but I'm probably going to end up hooking my slide hammer up to it, but you can see if I can get it out without first. There's that little pin I was talking about. You can see how small and fragile they are and rusty, and yeah, trying to pry on this and moving this is trying to snap those off, so I'm going to go get my slide hammer and pull it off the proper way. Alright, so this is what you really need to yank a hub out. This is an absolute lifesaver. A lot of cars, you're not going to get it out without one of these, and it certainly turns a nightmare into only about a 30-second job. So if you're not familiar with these, they have all kinds of attachments that hook up. You can pull all kinds of stuff with them, but there's the hub one. You just put the lug nuts back on, and then this weight, you slide it back and forth, and it hits that, and it causes a vibration and a pulling force that'll pop it out. So because I left these e-brake pads, or I should say framework of the pads left, like I said, it's still going to catch down here. So once it breaks free, I need to kind of like pull it up and out. So I'm going to be careful that I don't just yank that thing off and break all this crap off, because I'm going to take it easy until I get it just a little bit loose. That way I can hopefully get it out without having to remove these. What was that, 3 seconds? It took me about 3 hours to get one off of an Explorer without that tool. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, this car does not have ABS. If you do have ABS, like I said in the beginning, you'll have a wire that plugs to it potentially. So obviously you would need to unplug that wire first, and I think that's what that little hole in this cover is for, potentially. I don't know, because this one doesn't have ABS. So obviously if yours has ABS or a wire run to it, unclip the wire first. All right, there's my new one. These do go in a certain way, because you can see it's not square. So you can't go like that, you gotta go like that. And then if you had ABS with the plug or whatever, obviously make sure you put the plug back in the same orientation, not upside down. One thing you gotta be sure of when you're sticking this back in is to line those holes up. As you can see there, it's not lined up. So you gotta get it just right so your holes line up 100%. That way you can get your bolts back in. Alright, so apparently you can't put this in the wrong way, because it's hard to see here on video. But the way I have it right now, I had it on upside down before, and the holes didn't line up. So the way I have it now, the top, and again, it's hard to tell on video, but the top is actually slightly more narrow than the bottom is. So if you don't get it the right way, it won't line up. Alright, so you set it in there just enough to where it'll hold itself, and then get all 4 of your bolts started. You don't want to whack this thing in there and not have them lined up, so I just stuck it on there just enough to where it hold itself. I have all 4 bolts started. I got a few turns of each. So now I'm going to take a block of wood and try to knock this in most of the way, because, well, all the way actually, because you want it fully installed, because you don't want to be trying to pull it back with the bolts, because that'll throw off your torque spec when you go to tighten it down. So I got all 4 bolts started, so now I'm going to whack this down all the way. Block of wood and my mini sledge, and then once it's all the way down, you can tell by, you know, if it's flush back there, then you check top, bottom, left, right. Then I'm going to tighten my bolts down. Alright, so I got it all torqued down. Your torque spec on that is 70 foot-pounds of torque. Even though I hammered that down with a block of wood, it still wasn't quite down all the way. So just kind of go in like a crisscross pattern. If you notice, the bolts are kind of like pulling it or whatever, so chances are you're not quite all the way in. So just go around in a crisscross pattern until those bolts start getting tight, and then also torque it down 70 foot-pounds in a crisscross pattern. So fully torqued down now, so I gotta back this back out to get this to collapse. Again, if yours had pads, it probably would have been further out than mine was all the way down. So basically get it back to around where it was, preferably a little less, because a lot of times these things shift while you're working on it, which mine definitely have. And that's another thing too, you can move them around, or lightly tap with a hammer to get them in the position where you need them, because a lot of times it's gonna stick when you try to put your rotor back on, even if you put it back exactly where it was, because it shifted. So it's usually a good idea to go a little further back, a little more collapsed than what it was, and they auto adjust, so that's not something you have to worry about. It'll automatically, over time as you drive it, it'll come back out the where it should be. And you run into this problem too while you're backing it down. See how it's kind of like separating? Yeah. And you gotta give them a squeeze. There you go. Because everything sticks. So see how it closed the gap? So if that starts happening to you, just squeeze it occasionally as you're backing it out to where it needs to go back to. Alright, so as I said, I'm replacing my rotors too. So I've already popped the caliper apart, got my new pads installed and all that. I'll be posting an install video for that as well, although I'm assume if you're watching this that you already know how everything comes apart, so you probably don't need that video. But should you need or want to watch that video for whatever reason, it'll be in the Altima playlist on the channel. So if you got everything realigned correctly and you got your e-brake pads retracted enough, your rotor will slide over. I like to double check. Make sure it's pressed all the way on there, flush all the way around and spinning it. To hear a little bit of that rubbing noise is normal, because as I said, the pads will be like right there touching it. So actually, considering I don't have any pads left on mine, that doesn't sound too bad. So, and like I said, you know, I could replace those, but I never use the e-brake on this car, so I don't really care. So you can bitch at me if you want, don't care. So I'll put my little plug back in. You want to put that back in so rainwater and such doesn't get in there, moisture and whatever. There you go. So I need to put my brakes back on. So you assuming you're not replacing your brakes and you're just doing the hub, or regardless, you just slide it back over. So if you didn't change pads or nothing like that, it should slip back over your old rotor. But I've already got my piston depressed there and new pads installed and all that, so I gotta get that bracket back on there and pads pushed back over. But if you just took the old stuff off and you're putting old stuff back on, you know, it should line up. Alright, so I got my caliper and bracket back on there. Your caliper bracket bolt torque spec, 38 foot-pounds of torque. So now I'm ready to put my wheel back on. And as I said, guys, if you have a model where it's got that plug, then make sure you plug that back in. Alright, once you get your wheel back on, I try to tighten the bolts down as much as I can while it's free spinning. Sometimes I like, you know, I'll jab my foot under it or something. I like to torque in 3 steps in a crisscross star pattern on this 5-lug. So you never go one to the next, you always go opposing, like star pattern. Final torque value, 90 foot-pounds of torque. I like to do it in sets. I'll go 30, 60, 90 approximately, and then after go over it again and check it. This helps make sure that your rotor and your wheel go on perfectly flush. It helps to walk it on, that way you don't get it tightened down cockeyed. And that's it. That's how you replace rear hub on a 02 to 06 Altima. Should be probably the same for later models. Like I said, if you want to see the Mustang, check out the Mustang playlist. If you want to see what else I've done to this car, like the intake, header, and exhaust and all that, check out the Altima playlist. If this video helped you out, make sure to leave me a like. Subscribe, hit the bell, click all for notifications if you want to be notified when I post. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. I'll catch you on the next one.